I am so glad that you could all join me today for this very, very special event. And it is truly my immense privilege and honor to be here with you all and return this World War I Gold Star Mothers and Widows Pilgrimage Medal to the Morrison family. So while many military medals and honors are rightfully awarded to the brave men and women who put on the uniform to defend our great nation and our allies, this medal is unique and stands as a testament to the families who also made extreme sacrifices in times of war. This World War I Pilgrimage Medal was presented to Agnes Kissick Morrison, who lost her oldest son, Private First Class Joseph William Morrison, of the Army's 554th Ambulance Service when his field hospital in France was hit by artillery fire. And that was on November 1st, 1918, which fatally wounded him. So Joseph, which I have to tell you, he was just beloved by his unit. All his fellow soldiers and his commander, they called him Joe Boy, because apparently he just had boundless energy and he was so optimistic. So he was noted for his bravery to run onto the battlefield to retrieve his wounded brothers. And he was killed in action, think about this, just 10 days before the war was declared over. So 10 days before Armistice Day. So President Woodrow Wilson, the Memorial Day following the end of World War I, said over the graves of Americans in France the following: "The Americans who went to Europe to die are a unique breed. They crossed the seas to a foreign land to fight for a cause which they did not pretend was peculiarly their own, which they knew was the cause of humanity and mankind. These Americans gave the greatest of all gifts, the gift of life and the gift of spirit. The spirits of those lost have lived on in their families for generations, as evidenced today by this gathering of the Morrisons." Agnes Morrison traveled to France to visit Joseph's grave in 1933, thanks to a federally funded program that allowed close to 7,000 mothers and widows to make this very emotional trip. And the medal she received, which we're going to return today, came to Treasury as the contents of an abandoned safe deposit box. So it was long forgotten. So our vault in Harrisburg safeguards dog tags, pins, medals, ribbons, and so much more from every branch of service in almost every major conflict. So returning these priceless items to veterans and their families is my favorite part of being state treasurer. It truly is. Because as a veteran myself, each return is near and dear to my heart. So since taking office, and as of today, we've returned 477 military decorations. That includes 11 Purple Hearts and 3 Bronze Stars. And this is the first Gold Star medal that we've ever received and returned. So my team leaves no stone unturned when searching for the rightful owners of any military decoration that comes into our care. So when we connected with Christine, we were thrilled to be able to reunite this piece of your family's story with you. So on behalf of Pennsylvania Treasury Department and on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I extend my deepest appreciation and gratitude for Joseph Morrison's service and the ultimate sacrifice that he made, and for his family's immense sacrifices made for our country. So more than 100 years ago, Private First Class Morrison lost his life in our defense, and his sacrifice means as much today as we stand right here than it did that day in France during World War I. He was a true hero, and your family's sacrifice will never, ever be forgotten. So I can promise you this: the Pennsylvania Treasury Department will never stop looking for the veterans and their families who should be holding the hundreds of military decorations that remain in our vault. And the public, so anybody out there, if you want to help us, you can just go visit patreasury.gov/unclaimed-property/medals, and you can look at our database. It is listed by county, and see if you recognize any of these military decorations. Thank you. So before we present the medal and the proclamation to Chris, I want to invite Christine. Chris, would you like to come up and say a few words? And I should mention, Chris is the great-granddaughter of Joe's mom, and so Joe was her great-uncle.
Correct. Yes. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming. This came about in a very odd way. I received a phone call on my cell phone from the Hamilton Briner Funeral Home. And living in Brooklyn, New York, I got very nervous. I picked up the phone, and the voice at the other end said, "Chris, it's Kenny. Don't worry, nothing's wrong. Everybody in your family's okay." And he explained to me that I was going to receive a phone call from Lori Hetrick from the Pennsylvania Treasury, and it wasn't a scam. He wanted to make sure that I realized that. He said it has something to do with the metal that your cousin Agnes had in a safety deposit box, and it was unclaimed. So Lori, thank you for doing all of your diligent work and your whole staff, because they found me. They tracked me down, and she explained that this was a medal that our great-grandmother had received after Joe had been killed. And we're very glad to have it back in the family. One of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about was about Joseph Morrison himself. In September of 2022, my husband and I visited the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery in France, where he's buried. And it's a magnificent cemetery. It's the largest American cemetery in Europe, with 15,320 Americans buried there. It was established not when my great-grandmother visited France, but in 1937. The United States government purchased 130 acres of land and then proceeded to reinter all of the Americans that were at a variety of cemeteries throughout that region of France. When we visited, it was striking. It's magnificent. And you go to the visitor center, and there is a huge sign that says when it was created and why. And it says all of the soldiers reinterred in the cemetery were reinterred regardless of rank, race, religion, or creed, which I think was magnificent, because you actually need a guide to take you to the grave you want to visit. It's huge. We had a young French woman who took us in a golf cart to his grave. We had let them know what day we were going to be there, and that's my husband and me in that photo over there, visiting the grave. But what I didn't realize until I saw the marker was that he had received the Croix de Guerre, which is the French award for bravery. And the young woman said to me, "Do you know why he received the Croix de Guerre?" And I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Well, he must have done something pretty spectacular." She said, because, it's the highest award that the French government gives. So that made me curious, and I had to do my research when I came home, and I dug around and found a lot more information about him and about the award, itself. And what she did do, though, I had some letters and photos with me, and she said, I'd like to scan all of this material because we keep it in our archives. And she said, "I'll tell you why. When we do tours of the cemetery, excuse me, and particularly with students, I like to stop at a grave where I know something about the person. I know who they were, what they did, what their background was, where they were from." And she said, because it makes it very real for that group of people who are visiting, the cemetery for historical purposes. I said, yes, that would be fine. So I gave them what I had then, but I have more that I'm going to send to them, especially after today's event. So when I came back from that trip, I wanted to do more and more research about him. And what I'd like to do is I'm reading excerpts from 3 different documents that I have. The first one is a letter that my Uncle Joe wrote to his parents. And it's a letter where he's thanking them for giving him permission to join the ambulance corps. I'm just going to read a small section of it. I am pleased that you and Father granted me the permission to join it, for I truly feel that I will be able to do my bit in defense of humanity, best in this line of work, and I assure you that I will do it when the time comes, to the very best of my ability. Father, I clearly understand the step that I am taking, and very likely I will have to endure hardships, and in the end, receive little thanks. But someone has got to do it, and why should I be the slacker? It is the least of my thoughts, and I can feel that I have done my part in defense of humanity and in bringing this terrible war to an end. And then this is the translation from the citation of the Croix de Guerre with Palm as to why he received it. During the attack north of Saint-Mépie from October 2nd to the 9th of 1918, he drove his ambulance night and day, always the first to go to evacuate the wounded. Never sought shelter when the roads over which he was driving were being bombarded. Often exposed himself to machine gun fire. Distinguished himself by evacuating the wounded immediately without thought of danger. And then the final thing that I wanted to read was a letter that was given to our great-grandmother when she went with the Gold Star Mothers in 1933. It was a letter with an association, historical association in France. They typed it in English so she could read it, obviously. But then all of the members signed it. And it reads, Dear Madam, we thought that you might like to take home with you this little memorial present from your pious pilgrimage to France. This little sack is made with our united flags, and it is filled with earth of France, which is sacred to you as it is to us, because of all the young heroes who rest in our soil. We are sure there is nothing that can give more peace and joy to your children than to know that both your country and ours are still closely united for the defense of the common ideal, for which they sacrificed their lives. You have won the gratitude of the women of France, and their hearts feel and sympathize with yours during these days of emotion and souvenirs. We beg to remain, dear madam, affectionately and gratefully yours. So I will leave these 3 items over here for anyone, who would like to see it. But, that's really says it all in terms of who he was as a person. And, it's very nice to have this Gold Star Medal returned to the family. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. So, for you military types out there, the Croix de Guerre is a really big deal. It's the equivalent of a Silver Star. So, and it's awarded for valor when coming into contact with the enemy. So, it's a really big deal. So, thanks again, Chris. Thanks for reading those. Oh my gosh, they were wonderful. So now we're going to hear from Pastor Jeff Stonesifer, a very close family friend of the Morrisons. So, Pastor?
Today is Thanksgiving Day, and I'd like to tell you why I think it's Thanksgiving Day. I'd like to thank the patriotic countries, France and United States of America, for having the great wisdom and insight and strength to honor special people as Private Morrison was. The Pennsylvania Department of the Treasury. I'd like to thank the department for its continued work in honoring and upholding these beautiful people who gave so much for us. Lori Hetrick and Chris Morrison, I'd like to thank both of you for keeping me in the loop. As things developed, as I heard more and more about what was going to happen, you were there for me, and I appreciate that. If I had a question, concern, needed an update, you were both there for me, so thank you. Claudia Gross, thank you for being here at the library and for what you have done for us and to keep this very important item before us so that we could understand the great patriotism that exists right here in our county. And for all of you who served in the military services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, how many of those here in this room served in the military? Would you please put up your hand? Thank you. Thank you for what you did and how you did it. God bless you. And then finally, Aggie Morrison and Joe Morrison. In 1982, I came to Origsburg to serve as pastor of St. John's United Church of Christ. 1982, I met Joseph and I met Agnes. I visited their house often. I served them communion, both in church and privately. We prayed often. I visited Agnes when she went to drums and also to another institution as she aged and needed to have some personal care. So I want to thank all of you before I share just a few special moments about a great Thanksgiving person. I give my great thanks to Private Morrison. I'd like for you to think very briefly, and I'm going to speak very briefly because we have other things to do today, about Private Morrison's great gift. First of all, he was sacrificial. And some of you have used that word today, and that's certainly true, sacrificial. He was sacrificial, first of all, in his patriotism. Some of you served, and I want to thank those of you who did serve, and I appreciate that very much. My father was a prisoner of war in World War II, and he got married in 1944. He became a prisoner in 1945 in the Battle of the Bulge, and he came home in 45 when the war ended, and I showed up in 1946. So I remember the military stories that have been shared with us, and I thank Private Morrison so much for his ability to be patriotic in what he did. I also like to thank him for his sacrificial caregiving. He was there as a medic. He chose to go to help others. He chose to live in peace. He chose to work for peace. That's beautiful in so many, many ways, and that's been shared today by some of our speakers. And finally, I'd like to thank him for his sacrificial servitude. He chose to serve. He chose to go out there and do what needed to be done very courageously and hopefully, and he really blessed us in what he did. So in conclusion today, I'd like to say, Private Morrison, thank you so much for what you did for this great country, for our America, and I look forward to talking with you at some point in the future, and God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Stonesifer. Yeah, it reminds me of the verse in Revelations, greater love hath no man than this, that a man would lay down his life for his friends. So I think that's emblematic of Joe Boy's service. So now we're going to hear from VFW Post 2198 Commander David Moore, who, by the way, the post is named, right, from Joe Morrison.
Bear with me in my chicken scratch. Morrison family, it is an honor for being invited to be with you today for this Gold Star presentation. Treasurer Garrity, thank you for your service. Lori, the lead representative for the Treasury Bureau of Unclaimed Property, was very professional and informative about today's event. Thank you for your effort putting this event together. Thank you very much. What an exciting but somber day honoring one of our town's own, Joseph W. Morrison, who was killed in France during World War I. PFC Morrison is also the namesake of Origsburg Joseph W. Morrison, Post 2198. All members of the Origsburg VFW and American Legion are honored and privileged to be part of this event. Present today are Rick Rarick, the commander of James Steele, American Legion Post 369. Ricky. Also with us are Jay Jones, Gold Star father of Jason Jones, retired Admiral Rob Allison, retired Army Major Dennis Campbell, PA Department Commander Chief Warrant Officer Darren Doc Dreher, Borough Manager and Navy veteran Bill Reppy. Dave Snyder is with us today. He's also a Bronze Star recipient. Schuylkill County Chamber of Commerce President Bob Carl will meet us at the Veterans Memorial Building after this ceremony. Thanks again for inviting us all so we can spend the time with the Morrison family and state officials. God bless BFC Joseph W. Morrison, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander. Now, I'd like to invite Chris back up, along with your family, to receive the World War I Gold Star Mothers and Widows Pilgrimage Medal. Yeah, come on up.
There's a crew. Over here or?
No.
Okay.
Oh, jeez. That's awful.
Whoops.
I didn't know it was loose.
It's okay.
So it is such an honor and a privilege to return this Gold Star medal to you. It surely is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we have one more thing. So we also have a proclamation that I'll read. I need glasses for this. So whereas service in the United States military is a noble and selfless calling, and whereas those who serve in the United States military make sacrifices, sometimes profound, in living up to their solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and whereas as a society we have an obligation to recognize and respect their service, and whereas under Pennsylvania law, the Pennsylvania Treasury Department receives unclaimed property and is responsible for returning said property to its rightful owners, and whereas military decorations reported to the Pennsylvania Treasury Department as unclaimed property deserve extra attention and special care. And whereas the Pennsylvania Treasury Department has a fiduciary duty to act as a custodian for such military decorations, and until such military decorations are returned to the rightful owners or their heirs, Treasury holds this duty as sacrosanct in maintaining the safekeeping of all military decorations. And whereas Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacy Garrity is a retired United States Army Reserve colonel with more than 30 years of military service, who is honored to recognize fellow veterans, and whereas the Pennsylvania Treasury Department has identified a World War I Gold Star Pilgrimage of Mothers and Widows Medal reported as unclaimed property belonging to Agnes Marie Morrison, and whereas the Pennsylvania Treasury Department received a World War I Gold Star Pilgrimage of Mothers and Widows Medal awarded to Agnes Kissick Morrison in honor of her son, Joseph William Morrison, who served his country as a private first class in the United States Army during World War I, who was killed in action in France on November 1st, 2018, 10 days before the end of the war. So now therefore be it that it is an honor and a privilege for the Pennsylvania Treasury Department and Treasurer Stacy Garrity to return the aforesaid military decoration to Christine Morrison, cousin of Agnes Marie Morrison, and be it further resolved that the Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacy Garrity, on behalf of the Pennsylvania Treasury Department and the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, extends her deep gratitude to Joseph William Morrison for his honorable and faithful service in defense of our great nation.
Thank you.
So again, thank you all for being here. It is such a tremendous honor to return this military medal to the Morrison family. And thank you all. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And now we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I wanted to ask.
Yes, please.
So there are a lot of materials here that other members of my family and we've been discovering, and I am working with an archivist. I told a few of you this in New York to restore some photos and documents, and he's also then going to digitize everything so that if the VFW Post you can have access to that. I'm trying to do it to make it available to as many people as possible. He also gave me some very sound advice in terms of, he said, what do you want to do with the medal? I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I don't want it to sit in a safety deposit box for another 50 years. I'd like people to learn from it and learn history. I said, I was thinking, and I've talked with some family members about donating it to a museum, or he said, just be careful. You want to make sure that the museum you donated to is going to show it. He said a lot of times they get materials, so many materials, that they end up being in storage and that sort of thing. So I'm pursuing several different options that would have a World War I exhibit. And I thought that would be appropriate because it's not just the medal, but it's also his life and what he was doing when he served the country, and all that transpired, the letters and the photos and that sort of thing. So if any of you have any questions, I can also, I do have with me copies of the photos from the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery. I made lots of them at home before I came here. So if anyone would like copies of those photos, I have those. And then I can certainly make arrangements to provide any of the other documents. Okay?
Thank you, Chris. Did anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
This is why we had Bob Carl go into the memorial building. We have a great display of veterans room there. We're getting new cases, very secure. They're about $30,000 a piece. And but we like to show the family, if possible. We're going to meet Bob about 1:30. I'm sure he's there. But if you could come with us or drive up, to the memorial just to see what has been accomplished. Jay Jones has been a big part of the restoration, and but anyway, we'd just like to offer, that part of Warrensburg, for the medal also.
No, thank you. And make sure that you all read the letter that his commander sent to his father. I mean, it is so special. It talks about how Joey, they all called him Joey son, and or Joey boy. And they sent him out first for every mission, even though he was just a private first class, and sergeants would follow him because he was so brave, and they knew that he would get the mission done. So he was so mission oriented. So make sure you read that. It's really touching. Okay, so again, thank you all for being here. Means a lot to not only me, but the entire Morrison family. And I'm so happy you were able to share Joey's story.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.